Hey everybody, welcome back to Overlooked and Underplayed, the series where I show you 7 cards, one of each color, a multicolor, and an artifact, all ran in under 10,000 decks that I think you guys should probably start playing. As always, appreciate you guys clicking on the video, and let's get into it. Up first in the white slot, we've got Hold the Line. 1 and 2 white for an instant. Blocking creatures get +7/+7 until end of turn. This seems pretty straightforward as a combat trick card, but as I came to find out, there's plenty of gross stuff you can do with this thing. For instance, if you're running a deck like Alonda the Dusk Rose, or planning on building that new Basri Tomorrow's Champion that's coming out in Aether Drift, this card's actually really gross, as the deck spits out plenty of tokens, making the card's +7/+7 on blocking much easier and much more deadly to initiate. But more so than that, these tokens have lifelink, which when they get +7/+7 could be a game-ending amount of life, especially when you're running stuff like Whip of Erebos or Sanguine Bond. But that's not all, folks. This thing is obviously great in Arcades, because that deck just blocks all day. But what I was thinking could be really cool is building an Alesha Who Smiles at Death deck, where the main win cons are creatures like Cacophony Scamp, along with Hold the Line, and sack outlets like Altered Dementia, which also works really good with Hold the Line, I may say, to deal big damage with these small ping on death creatures while they still have the +7/+7 buff. And all this isn't even to mention you don't have to use it on your creatures. You could use this thing on an opponent's turn during combat, save the deck that's helping you, hose the deck that's giving you issues. This card's a really interesting one. I gotta see how well this works. And I know that back in the day I loved using Righteousness. I think that's what it was called. So, you know, this has gotta be cool. Wonderscape Sage comes in at the blue slot. For 1 and a blue, at a 1/3 with flying, you can tap it, return a land you control to its owner's hand, draw a card, then discard a card unless that land was a non-basic land type. Here lately, I am loving small creatures that provide big value for specific decks, and this thing's definitely one of them. We finally broke AC, guys. We finally did it. But this card is really good in AC, and you know, as you have a guaranteed land drop each turn on top of a draw and the draw off AC, and potentially grave filling if you bounced a basic land back, that could also work in some specific decks. So like in something like my Tassiger, I actually might use this to put stuff in the grave. This also works incredibly well with utility lands like Bajuka Bog or Mystic Sanctuary to get not only the card draw from Wonderscape, but also reuse the ETB effects of the land over and over again, which is incredibly strong for putting 0 mana into it. This doesn't seem bad in something like a Kelos Lagoon Mystic, where you run a bunch of tapped utility lands and then you reuse them with Wonderscape. They enter untapped with a Kelos anyway. Keep in mind there's also artifact lands, and now there's an enchantment land, which may come into play with this bounce and replay loop that we've got with this card. I've always loved the Moonfolk that bounce back lands. Me and the Moonfolk have always been close. So it's cool to see them still around. Give it a try. Speaking of give it a try, Corpses of the Lost is our black card for the list. For 2 and a black, we get an enchantment. Skeletons you control get +1/+0 and have haste. Whenever Corpses of the Lost enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 black skeleton pirate creature token. At the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, you may pay 1 life. If you do, return Corpses of the Lost to its owner's hand. Now hear me out, this card doesn't read great. I have skipped over it countless times because of the skeleton text. It's kind of clunky, it might be a little overcosted. Funnily enough, I actually have a video talking about that exact same thing coming up, so watch out for that. This thing, of course, could be ran in a skeleton deck. Like if you're running a Tiny Bones skeleton tribal deck, cool, do your thing. But this card actually provides 2 much better pieces of utility. First, it's a token engine if you commonly descend 1 each turn, which, who isn't descending 1 each turn, you know? If you're running like Sakar Deathkeeper, based around tokens and sacking your creatures, this will be great making 3/2 skeletons with haste every turn, but that's still not super strong. What is super strong is getting a body each turn, as well as a guaranteed enchantment you can cast each turn, which is honestly ridiculously perfect in my Go Shinte Shrine enchantment token deck, based off Impact Tremor style effects, tokens, and enchantment ETBs. Corpses of the Lost just covers all the bases in that list, and if you have a list of your own that sounds similar, maybe give Corpses of the Lost a try. For the red card today, we've got Curse of Obsession. For 4 and a red, we've got an enchantment or a curse enchant player. At the beginning of enchant player's draw step, that player draws 2 additional cards. At the beginning of enchant player's end step, that player discards their hand. So this is obviously pretty good in a wheel deck. If you're in a Nekasar deck trying to get people to lose life for drawing, what's better than someone drawing not only an extra card, but losing their hand at the end of turn? Especially if you're running reanimation sub-themes, like if you have a Dance of the Dead or a Reanimate in there. Also great if your opponents are just dumping their hand at the end of every turn. Also, if your commander has some recursion built in, like Gen Arcanum Weaver, there may be an argument there to try this card out on yourself. But where I really like this card is something like Flubs the Fool or Angie Falconwrath, as it plays into their strategy of looting. But above that, I think this is really good. I think this is a really good Hellbent catalyst to maintain an empty hand during opponent's turns and still have 2 cards in play during our turns. Again, I'm still not 100% sure because there's not a lot of Hellbent cards, but there's definitely a weird-ass Madness Hellbent discard list that this needs to go in, with maybe like an Anthem of Rakdos with some token sub-themes. I don't know. If you thought of anything for this card, any deck that this could go into really well, drop a comment. I've always got one favorite card of the video, and this is my favorite card of this video. For our green card today, we've got Broken Fall. Broken Fall is 2 and a green. For an enchantment, return Broken Fall to your hand, regenerate target creature. This is honestly a very, very gross card. In any enchantment deck with green that cares about its commander, my Goshinte deck, this is going to go so nuts. This card provides protection from destruction-based removal and wipes, as well as bouncing to hand to activate, not sacrificing, which is so niche and weird, but so good. Meaning you can play it again next turn. Not only that, if you have enough mana, you could just bounce it to your hand to target something to regenerate it, and then play it again, and then bounce it, and then play it again, and then bounce it, and then play it again. If you've got infinite mana, you've got infinite enchantment ETBs. Easily the shortest entry on the list. It's just awesome. Picking one of these up right away. Also, as a bonus for you guys, we have Molting Skin, which is the same card. Just if you want to run 2 copies, there's also Molting Skin. Go nuts. Cloud Cover is our multicolor card of the day, and I think I've talked about this card before, but I don't think I had nearly this many people watching, so I want to reintroduce it to some of you guys. For 2, a white and a blue, we get an enchantment. Whenever another permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you may return that permanent to its owner's hand. This is some of the best protection I've ever seen. I'm not kidding. If you're in a permanent-based list, if you're in a permanent-based deck, or like a blink deck, this is nuts. If you're in a deck like a Layla Artful Provocateur, not only is Cloud Cover an enchantment, it protects all your artifacts and enchantments. Not only does it protect your artifacts and enchantments, it protects them by bouncing them, which means you can replay them to get more triggers off a Layla, or more triggers off fill in the blank commander that cares about ETBs. This isn't even to bring up just a straight up creature blink deck like Rune of the Hidden Realm running this. Turn every piece of removal that your opponents play into a choice of whether or not they want to see, you know, that Avenger Zendikar ETB again, or if they just want the Avenger to stay and play and keep giving counters. This is all not to even mention it says may. You don't have to do it, which is always good. Definitely one to pick up. And finally, our colorless card of the video is the Mana Rig. The Mana Rig is 3 colorless for a legendary artifact. Whenever you cast a multicolor spell, create a tapped Power Stone token. Pay 3x and tap it. Look at the top X cards of your library, put up to 2 of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This card is so freaking niche and weird that I totally get why it's not ran very much. That's not to say it's not good though. Also, Wizards. Why isn't this a 5-color creature? This would have been such a fun deck. I guess this entry is more of a community experiment. The card benefits you for playing multicolor spells with Power Stones, but Power Stones can only be used to cast artifacts, which reads very like non-Bowie. This seems impossible to make work, as there's not enough room in a deck to run all the multicolor stuff to trigger the guy, but also run enough artifact stuff to use the Power Stones that we got in the first place. This made me think of the Transformer cards, which a lot of them are multicolor, as well as artifacts. I'm thinking in the direction of like a 5-color deck based around Transformers, like maybe Omnath Locus of All would be a good one to dig for those 3-color Transformers, then use Mana Rig to rush them out and dig for more. It's definitely a card that makes me want to dig for decks to make it work. I love looking at this thing. I think the ability is cool. So let me know if anything popped into your head while I was reading this thing, drop a comment. And with the Mana Rig, that puts a pretty little bow on this week's episode of Overlooked and Underplayed. If you enjoyed the video and haven't checked out the channel, be sure to check it out. And if you like it, subscribe. Drop a like, comment, let me know some of your favorite obscure cards to play with. If you'd like to show some additional support, it really helps out the channel a ton. Over on Patreon, it starts as low as $1. Speaking of which, big thank you to everybody you see on screen for supporting me over there. It seriously does help me out a ton. Make sure to check out the channel for more obscure cards, deck building tips, deck techs, tons of stuff like that. And I hope you guys have a good one. I'll see you.